What's up, everybody? Season finale of White Lotus, season 3. Lots to talk about. I wanted to take my time, take a couple days and really sit with it so we can really break this episode down. But before we get into this, go ahead and leave your initial feelings on the finale in the comments. All right, let's go. First off, this episode is called Amor Fati. I feel like that's how you say it. It means, it's a Latin phrase that can be translated to love of fate or love of one's fate. Obviously, that plays into this episode big time, especially with Rick and Chelsea, which we'll get to. Matter of fact, let's start with Rick and Chelsea first. So as we go through this episode, we see towards the beginning that Rick has this feeling of freedom after doing what he needed to do to get the monkey off his back, as he said, when it came to avenging his father. But the beginning dialogue of this episode explains why it ended up not working.
So we take life into our own hands. We take action, yeah? Our solutions are temporary. They are quick fix. They create more anxiety, more suffering. There is no resolution to life's questions. It is easier to be patient once we finally accept there is no resolution.
So that did a real good job summarizing, even though it's at the beginning of the finale. It does a great job summarizing essentially everything that happens in this episode with all of the characters. Everyone is going through all this pain and trauma, and they're trying to find ways out of it. But as the monk said, all the solutions, they're quick fixes, and that suffering won't cease. It's only going to make it worse. And so what Rick did specifically when he went and confronted the guy who ends up being his dad, he thinks it's going to make him feel better, but it doesn't. And it actually makes it even worse later on. Also, I can't remember if it was the last episode, maybe the episode before that, the monk also gave more dialogue saying that all types of violence kind of create that violence around us, so like psychological violence, physical violence, like all of that basically directly affects the people around us too. And we see that in this episode with Rick as well, with all his shenanigans ending up affecting Chelsea a lot, obviously. But not only that, he ended up traumatizing the actress and her friends and all that kind of stuff. So it's like that cycle perpetuates. And like in Buddhism, the idea is to end suffering, right? But in this finale, that definitely does not happen. We then get this scene with Chelsea talking to Saxon, which is one of people's favorite scenes of the show. But this really gets into the idea of fate.
But the laws of the universe, how we're all connected. She has this theory that there are different groups, and we're in these groups with people we know and people we don't know. And these groups are working together to fulfill this divine plan. And sometimes you don't even know you're in the same group as someone else. So you and I, we could be in the same group and not even know it.
So there's a meta level to that dialogue, because in the show, yes, they're all in these groups and they're all connected, right? Here's the problem I have with a couple of the themes they introduced in the show, specifically also in the finale, like this idea of fate, and then the idea of there not being conclusion and resolution and all that. I wish that was more built up throughout the entire season, so it has this gigantic payoff of how this scene was affected by fate, that scene was affected by fate. There's not really a conclusion with this relationship. There's not really resolution with this thing. I feel like if that was building up throughout the season, it would have paid off way more in this finale, because those are very large themes to directly initiate in the finale.
Because Amor Fati, you know what that means?
I don't know what that means.
It means you have to embrace your fate, good or bad. Whatever will be, will be. Yeah. And at this point, we're linked, so if a bad thing happens to you, it happens to me. I think we're going to be together forever, don't you?
That's the plan.
You know, with her saying that in her dialogue to Saxon in the last episode about how she knows she's in this fight with Rick, you know, where she's hope and he's pain and one of them will win, right? I wonder if she is at peace with how things played out. Obviously, you'd think no, but I don't know. Chelsea, I don't know. I'm not sure. Y'all leave that. I'm actually curious to know what y'all think about that. Do you think Chelsea would have regrets about this relationship and how it played out if she could still speak on it? Y'all let me know what you think. I also like in this dialogue how Chelsea's talking about this divine plan and how everything's going to pan out, and kind of she's going with the motion of everything and the flow of everything. And then when she asks Rick she says they're going to be together forever, and then Rick says that's the plan, where he, like, it's his plan. He still wants to be in control. So she let go. He's still trying to determine his fate. That's really interesting. I definitely called this moment right here.
He killed my father.
He's your father. He's your father. He told me.
Granted, it was a little predictable. However, I do think the impact was still there simply because of his acting. The acting was great. So it's still, as I was watching it, like, I was still emotionally involved in everything. But yeah, that was a little, you can smell that coming for some episodes. So Gaitok ends up popping Rick, which we're going to get to Gaitok separately in a little bit. But what's really cool here is people noticed that in an earlier episode, Chelsea was talking about yin and yang. And I don't think this necessarily forms yin and yang, but they are mirroring each other, where one is face up, one's face down. Now, what could have been a yin and yang moment here is they are wearing, like, he's wearing yellow pants, she's wearing a yellow shirt. He's wearing a floral shirt. She's wearing a, I think it's like a floral, like a skirt or something, floral skirt. So it is inversed in that way. But what they could have done simply was, because they both got shot, if her head was like down here and his was up there, then like even like the holes of the yin and yang would be like on the top and the bottom. They could have just did that if that's what they were going for. Now, depending on what they think of the afterlife or what you think of the afterlife as the audience, they technically do end up together forever. They ended up dead together forever. Yeah. So if that's where that line of dialogue is going, about them being together forever, because even Rick repeated it right before he died, I understand that. Once more, I feel like that could have had more build up than just building up in the finale, like that piece of dialogue, right? I feel like, interestingly, I felt this season was like an extremely slow burn, slow build up, as a lot of people thought. But at the same time, there wasn't that much build up throughout all of these episodes. It kind of felt like the plot would stall a lot instead of just moving forward slowly. And so even though things weren't moving quick, it still feels like there's a lot we didn't get to sit with and explore and just dive into, especially with a character like Zion. We didn't really get to enjoy his character much, sit with his character much. He's kind of like a one-dimensional note in this show. But once again, the acting is really what carried this season. If there wasn't such good performances, I feel like this season would be horrible. But the dynamic between Belinda and Zion was amazing, especially in this scene. Like, it really brought out some comedy, you could just tell how much he actually cares for his mom and wants the best for her and things like that. So that was there, but it's really just the acting, in my opinion. It came out that Zion was supposed to hook up with Piper, and Piper was just trying to get, like, you know, because she's a virgin, she was just trying to get the sex out of the way. And for him, I don't necessarily know his plot point with it, but it does make sense, because when he showed up in the show, one of the first things he said is like, everyone's getting some but me. So I don't know if that's what it was building up to, and then it just never got put into the finale. But that's what I'm saying, like, it wouldn't have made sense too much, because we didn't really get to sit with his character. We never saw him and Piper interact at all. And when I saw Belinda make essentially the same move as Tanya here, it's really a commentary on what money does to you, right? But once again, I feel like it didn't hit that hard, because her character shifted out of nowhere. Where, compare that to Piper, you know, a lot of people are saying her character shifted out of nowhere. I completely disagree. There was a lot of build up to getting her into the monastery, her staying there and trying it out, and then the conflict of Lockie wanting to stay there and all that. And we saw scenes of her trying the food and sleeping and all that. So by the time she got back, we're like, oh yeah, like, nah, she's on that, you know, rich girl. She wants that lifestyle. I called that too, like, in a few episodes ago. I said it's just different where she has the resources where she could just try it out, and if she doesn't like it, she could just go back to being rich, and that type of privilege was always present. But anyway, back to Belinda here. This was on a dime that it switched. Like, we didn't even know she was going to get the money till this episode, and then she started acting funny when she got the money immediately, which makes sense. But I'm just saying, as a show and as a viewer, I would have liked to see a steady switch up. Like, if she got the money a couple episodes ago, And then there was like this buildup of we're seeing her slowly turn into this, like putting the money first and screwing everybody over and all that. Like it could have used an episode or two buildup, in my opinion. That's what I felt about this finale in general, was that it needed more buildup. But I do have to say, on the flip side of that, the dynamic and the storyline of Jaclyn and her friends confused me. And y'all could leave comments. Listen to what I say first, and y'all could y'all could leave some comments and tell me your perspective, because I'm confused. So everybody loved the monologue that Laurie gave here, right? I'm gonna get to that in a second. But this is how this scene played out to me. You had Jaclyn and Kate saying how much they enjoyed the week and how it was fun and all that. And at first I thought they were just being in denial and passive aggressive again, how they've been the whole entire season, right? And then Laurie gives this great monologue where essentially she's saying that their surface level stuff that they always engage on is actually extremely meaningful to her. She doesn't need to have this super deep relationship, because it's just being present with them. That's enough with her. That's enough for her. That's beautiful. I love that. And then after that, Jaclyn and Kate have this meaningful I love you, where it feels like that's the first time they said I love you on this vacation and actually meant it. But here's where I'm confused. I don't know how we got here. This seemed way out of left field, which I guess this isn't just my opinion. I feel like I've seen people say this, and I guess it's for different kind of things, because some people were saying Piper's change was out of left field, and some people were saying Belinda's change was out of left field. I feel like Laurie's change, all the friends right here felt, how did we get here? What led to this? Because like she had that one night stand and then she left. Like, what about that situation made her have this revelation? And if Jaclyn and Kate, and y'all can once again leave comments on this, if they were being meaningful about having such a great week, how they had a horrible week. Well, at least the last few days anyway. The last few days were horrible. But even Jaclyn at the beginning of the episode went into Laurie's room and was like, I want to be your friend. And it seemed like she had this revelation about wanting to treat Laurie better, and we didn't see anything that led to that. So yeah, y'all let me know if I'm missing something, or I feel like I'm missing some type of character development here, or it just wasn't there. And I genuinely do want to know if y'all, like, if I did miss something, please put it. Like, I want this to make sense to me. And the last thing on the three friends is I wish this wasn't the last scene we got from them, because, and this is a critique, I guess, on the whole end of the episode, we didn't get to sit with the shooting at the hotel at all. We saw nobody react to it, really. No one talked about it because it was the end of the episode. But we didn't see any aftermath. Like Belinda and Zion are leaving on a boat like nothing happened. They're leaving like nothing happened. Does Saxon even know that Chelsea died? Like, he's just sitting there reading the book that she gave him. Is that his way of grieving or what? I don't know. And if this goes back to that dialogue of there not being conclusions and resolution, that's a writing cop-out. To put that as a piece of dialogue in the finale, to have an ambiguous ending, cop-out. Bad writing, cop-out. That idea of ambiguity and, like I said, not having resolutions and not having conclusions, that was not ingrained in this story. It wasn't until this episode. So that's a cheap way to not wrap everything up. One thing I did like about the ending, though, is how this season was all about, like, spirituality was at the core of so much. But these people only got their advancement when it comes to finances or promotions or whatever, they only got it when they went against their morals, which I feel like is a huge social commentary, which I agree with. I think there's a lot of things in his life where if you're trying to get ahead, sometimes you got to sacrifice your ethics. We hear about it all the time, especially in different types of industry. So I like this as a social commentary for that. But it's wild to me that Mook was like, I don't want no scrub, talking about Gaitok. She's like, I don't want no scrubs, but I'm cool with the killer though. Like, yeah, I'll get with him now. What? But yeah, I just think it's a great talking point, this storyline of Gaitok having to go against his morals to get what he wants. I just feel like that brings great conversation, interesting story, interesting plot. I do wish, once again, even though this season was slow. Mook was also another one note kind of character. She didn't really add much to anything really. I feel like her presence was essentially there to help with Gaitok's plot and storyline and character development, where he was getting this character growth indirectly through Mook because he was sprung and he wanted to get with her, which eventually made him make that decision to shoot Rick, right? Because he wanted to get with her. Not even necessarily the promotion. He didn't even know he was going to get the promotion. He was just kind of going back, I think anyway, to what she said about violence being human nature and all this kind of stuff. And he needs to, you know, be strong. And she was turned off when he was like, I like peace and I might quit my job and all that. I think that was what was going through his mind, because he was super sprung the whole entire season. But man, interesting ending to his storyline. But now let's move into the meat and potatoes of this show, which is the Ratliff family.
I know I'm not supposed to be attached to this kind of stuff, and I don't want to think that I am, but like, it's like I can't live like that.
This is just such a Westerner white way of handling spirituality for real, kind of trying it on, wearing it, see if you're gonna do it, and then just going back to your comfort zone, right? Like, this is not what it's about here, right? And she's essentially using the spirituality and that way of life to try to cope with her own guilt of her own wealth and excess and privilege, and essentially trying to almost punish herself in a way for living like how she lives. And she's using that spiritual life to do so, which is jacked up. And like I said, I saw this coming episodes ago. I knew this was how this was going to go. So I was actually surprised at the people saying that this shift came out of nowhere, because it seemed to me to be building up and be inevitable the whole entire season.
Like, it's okay for you to, like, worship me, but don't, like, worship me. You know what I mean?
Look, all you care about is getting off. And I saw you lying there, and I thought you looked a little left out. And I'm, you know, a pleaser. I just want to give everyone what they want, and I'm in a family full of narcissists.
Dude. Let's just drop this. Like, forever, please.
I have such mixed feelings about this full circle, like this whole plot coming full circle right here. I got so, oh my God. Okay. On one level, on a human level, the idea of narcissists and manipulating you and becoming a victim of narcissism and being a people pleaser at that can definitely lead you to do some crazy stuff. Absolutely. And I think he's like 17, right? I think Loki's character is 17, so he's a child, right? But just like on a writing story level, didn't like this as the moment of resolution here. And like I said, I've been sitting with this episode for a couple of days before I did this review, and I don't necessarily know how to articulate or why I don't like it on a writing level, but I know I don't though. I guess I got to sit with it some more. This is the moment where they're like actually addressing it, and it doesn't really get addressed. So I think a scene like this where Sax is like, drop it forever. I think eventually there's times where you have to confront, like there has to come a time where you actually confront it. This felt like something that would be in the penultimate episode, and then in the finale they revisit it again, and it actually has like some like oomph to it. Like, this scene was missing that tension to me. The tension got cut off completely way too quick for something this big, in my opinion. In that moment with Saxon, I think the full circle moment there is the first time he saw Chelsea, he was like in the pool under the water, and he was looking at her, and he was almost like a gator, like a predator, and she was his prey. Now he's looking at her, longing for her, like actually falling for her, in love with her, and seeing her as a human instead of an object and something to attain. And I feel like that was his character progression. Like, she actually did open him up, where she was trying to do that with Rick the whole entire season, but actually never did, and actually did it to Saxon. And so that's interesting right there. That's great writing to me right there. I like that. I think Saxon's whole character was the best example of good writing, and also just the most surprising character to me the whole season, because If y'all have seen all these videos I've done, obviously none of us were Saxon fans at the beginning of this, and we still may not be Saxon fans, but the writing, like, you really did start feeling for him, because everything that you thought he was going to do terribly to other people ended up happening to him. And so you're like, dang, like, he turned out to be a different character than I thought completely. So I like that. I like that they flipped the script on that. That was nice. So I also called that the poisonous fruit was going to be used in a smoothie at one point. Once again, I thought it was Saxon that was going to do it, but it's getting used here. I genuinely thought, I genuinely thought he was going to go through the essentially Kool-Aid plot here of the cult, right? And I'm glad he didn't, obviously, but how I was just talking about that scene with Saxon and Lockie, the tension being cut too soon, this is a great example of the opposite of that, where the tension, this is a long scene and it's tense the entire time. Like, this was great right here. Like, this was amazing TV at this moment, especially because there was a buildup with the idea of chugging a drink that doesn't taste good. Like, Saxon was telling Lockie that at the beginning of the season. Lockie didn't want to drink it, so he told him to chug it. The poisonous fruit doesn't taste good, so Saxon was about to chug it like he does his smoothie, and the dad was like, no. Now here's the thing though, I know they didn't drink the whole thing, but I feel like they drank enough to get sick, and none of them got sick. I feel like they all were going to get like a little sick the next day, and they didn't. I feel like they should have. Poor Lockie, though, decides to, for some reason, make his shake in a dirty blender. But anyway, there was one reason why I knew he may come back alive, is because he didn't fall in the pool, which thematically goes with what the monk said prior. Like, he said dying is like a drop of water going back into the ocean. And so due to the fact that Lockie didn't get in the water, I was like, oh, he might still be alive. Now, what's interesting is in his vision of when he was dying, he was in the water, and when he looks up, he sees 4 people, which most likely his family. But it seems as if they're all bald. So they're almost monk figures, like from the monastery. And when he wakes up in Tim's arms, he says, I think I saw God. Really interesting about that is if he's referring to this image, and he called his family members narcissists before this. It's interesting he would say he thinks he saw God, because his family's almost like, when you have like actual narcissists in your life, they have this godlike complex, and so he's kind of seeing his family as godlike. That's how I'm interpreting this, which I feel like goes great with the idea of them being narcissists and being wealthy and all of that. He sees his family as godlike. Once again, we're left with some ambiguity here. It seems like they're all getting notifications and seeing what's going on, but we don't get any reaction to the news, which is a crazy choice, because this has been building up literally since, I believe, episode 1, maybe 2. And so we're waiting the whole entire season to see what the family's going to be like when they realize they're broke. And we don't even get that. That was one of the most frustrating parts of this whole entire episode to me. I was waiting to see the reaction for 2 months. And so overall, I'm okay with this finale. Wasn't the best to me. It was a good viewing experience. Like, I was definitely into it. It just felt like it fell short of my expectations of what, I was kind of expecting on a lot of different levels, like an emotional level, a writing level. It felt, and like I said, it's so weird because I felt like the season was moving so slow. But then by the end of it, I was like, man, like, I wish we would have been able to spend more time with a lot of these characters when it comes to their transitions and character growth. The character growth itself seemed to come out of nowhere. It was like snail's pace, whoosh, like, then it went way too fast when it came to the character growth. It felt, for a lot of these characters, like the character growth wasn't really earned at all, in my opinion. It just kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of these characters. And so, yeah, I'm a little disappointed in it. I think if I was ranking the seasons from my favorites, I would probably go season 1, 2, and 3. So I hope it picks up, because it feels like the show's getting a little worse every season to me. So I hope season 4 is renewed and feels fresh. And I don't dislike this season. I would still tell people to watch it. Like, I feel like it's good TV. It's a fun watch, especially if you can binge it. I feel like it'd be even better. because of the pace. You'd be able to just go from episode to episode, so it wouldn't feel as slow. But yeah, I just want to thank you all though, because the funnest part for this season for me was making all this content and talking to everybody about it. So I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna miss doing this content, but I'm always doing other shows. Next week I'll be starting Last of Us when that drops. I've played both games. I think I've played both games twice actually. The first one maybe like 3 times. So I'm well versed in that. Like the show. Can't wait for season 2. So tap into that for sure. So until next week, y'all, for The Last of Us, I'll see y'all.